That's not what we're trying to sell here.
Yeah, no.
That's a
Not for free, eh?
That's on,
That's for
the
a different
GBRL
site.
OnlyFans.
Yeah, it's a different platform, eh?
Different platform. Then bring them back though.
GBRL OnlyFans.
We make so much content here that we always joke that there's a GBRL OnlyFans that we start.
I mean,
Gotta do what you
anything
gotta
to
do.
spread the good word of Master Carlos.
that's right. That's right. That's right. Keeping the legacy alive.
Yeah.
It's very alive.
It's the 13th commitment.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, Master Carlos
This
and
is all
Crazy
recorded.
Seniors, 12 Commandments.
This is gonna be the behind the scenes footage.
Yeah.
That's like the outtakes at the end, like beep.
Yeah.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the North Leeds Jitz podcast. Today on the show, I'm joined by, well, usually I say Professor Mike. But we actually got my co-host today, Kendall Reusing, multiple-time world champion. So we've upgraded from Professor Mike, really. You won't mind me saying that. But today we're primarily focusing on Jeremy here. Is it Pare, is it your name?
Pare. I'm a
Pare.
Frenchie, yeah.
Beautiful.
In French, they just cough at everything.
That's not true, but.
You guys are both competing on a Grapplefest card here in the UK. That's why you're here. We just had a seminar yesterday with Kendall. Jeremy beat me up. No, he was very nice. He decided he'd go easy on me and just tap me out a few times with very little effort, which was really, really cool. Jeremy, we'll get into it now, but you've been training since you were really young, right?
Yeah, I started training when I was 6 years old. I'm 20 years old now. It'll be my 14th year in May. So yeah, basically training all my life.
That's amazing, man. So tell me a bit about kind of where you're from, how you grew up,
Yeah, so I'm from Ottawa, Canada. I started off basically, I lived in Gatineau, and we moved to Ottawa. It was kind of like the English side, and we didn't know really anyone. So after school, we were looking for a program or just a babysitter, whatever we could do after school, because my parents would get off work at 5:30, and then there's this gym 5-10 minutes away from my house, and they offered this after-school program. Basically, what happened was they would pick you up from school, bring you to the gym. You'd hang out at the gym for an hour, then you would train, and then your parents would pick you up around 5:30. And at first I started off and it was me, my brother, my sister. And then, kind of kept going through that path. And then after that, ended up doing at a certain point in time, I was doing the after school program, all the kids classes, the advanced kids classes. And then I was doing the adult classes, and then I was training with the adults at night. And then I would go home. I'd bike home after. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started.
And what was it that made you at that young kind of so obsessed with it, you think?
Honestly, I think it was just, my professors were a really big part of it. They were always awesome. And the fact that I did it with my brother and sister also, they did it for 2 years at least. And then once I started competing, I've always done a lot of sports. But jiu-jitsu, I just fell in love with it right away, and just everything about it, honestly, it just helped me become a better person. That's what I really liked. And I just love fighting people. That's really what it was. I used to fight my brother all the time, and then it just got me to the point where I could fight different people for fun. So that's really the part that I love the most, honestly.
So when your brother and your sister decided after a couple of years that they weren't going to continue on, I've seen it a few times happen where, one sibling kind of drops out and then the parents I don't want to kind of go for the other one, or the other one doesn't feel like it's so much into it anymore. Yeah. Was there anything like that happen to you, or were you just nah, I'm in?
Honestly, the nice thing about it was because of the program we were doing, the after school program, the gym would pick us up from school.
It wasn't any extra stress.
They would bring us to the gym, and so my parents, instead of picking us up at 5:30, they would just pick me up around 9:30.
Right.
So for them, it didn't change that much. At first it started off my sister had dealt with a bunch of injuries, so she, slowly stopped doing it. And then my brother, he was just, still young at the time, and he decided to play soccer or some other sport.
Some nonsense sport we've never heard of.
football, call it here, football.
Oh, right.
Soccer, what's that?
And then for me, like, it was just really, I just always loved it. And I started teaching when I was really young. Like, I started helping out with that after school program when I was like around like 9, 10 years old. And because I think I was teaching, that's what kind of like helped them keep me in a little bit. And like, it was so close to our house that it really didn't make that much of a difference if I was still in. And I loved it so much that it just kind of kept me in.
And how did you manage to do loads of school and whilst also doing, 4 o'clock till 9 o'clock at jiu-jitsu?
Well, so I wasn't the best student ever. I was always one of those kids where like, I was kind of good at school in a way where I didn't need to study and I could get good grades. So my head was like, oh, if I don't have to put effort into this and I succeed, so I'll just put all my effort in something else and be good at something else that way. Like, and it worked until I got to like grade 11 when things actually started getting like harder and I had to like put more effort in school. But that was kind of how I went through school. Like, I never really put any like second thought into like my schooling, and I never really studied seriously. And I was just always focused on like sports. And like when I was in school, I was trying to waste time so I could go train. Like, I remember there's times when I was in like 10th grade where I would like skip school to go like I remember this one time Cyborg came to town and I skipped like a big test just so I could do like a private with him. Yeah, like I was not a good student at all, but like jiu-jitsu was my passion. So I was like, you know what, if I can just be successful in this, then I don't need school, so it's fine.
I'm not sure kind of what the culture is like in Canada but let's say if it was me and at kind of your age, starting so young, saying that I'd like similar with me, it was more Muay Thai, and people didn't even really know what that is. I think jiu-jitsu they probably wouldn't really understand. Did people, your peers, kind of understand what jiu-jitsu was, or like Jeremy's just never here? He's just doing jiu-jitsu.
I'm fighting people in the gym.
Yeah.
People had no idea what was happening. Like when I was in 9th grade, we did this really cool program. Which is basically like, it was like a sports study, but it was like individual sports study. So what would happen was there's certain days of the week where I would leave at lunch, I would go train, and then I would just do basically like online schooling. And then the other half of the day I was at school. So my peers, they kind of looked at me, they were like, man, like, were you never at school? Like, what's happening? And I was like, I'm training, it's fine. And I luckily like had this group of friends, and I had a few people who like got into jiu-jitsu as well. So they kind of knew what it was, but they didn't really understand like why I was spending so much time. And like, and then after a while, like once you get older and like people starts like seeing like, oh, okay, like this guy's like actually competing, he's like traveling. And that's when they started really respecting it. But before they really didn't understand, they were just kind of like, oh, this guy's just, being a bum and skipping school. And, so at first it was hard, but now it's like getting to the point where people are understanding a little bit. But even then, like jiu-jitsu is still growing a lot in Canada. Like it's not like, in California where like you can go to pretty much anyone on the street and be like, yeah, I do jiu-jitsu, and people understand. Like in Canada, it's still like very small, where like most of the population don't have no idea what it is, So it was really hard in the beginning, but now it's getting better, slowly.
Were you ever bullied at school?
Not so much. Like I wasn't at school a lot. Like I was, I was a lot of like the clown of the school.
Were you ever a bully at school?
I was never bullied. No, like that was something.
Just now.
Just now. Like okay, well, my brother doesn't count, so technically no. But like there's like I remember when I was younger, like my professor like kind of drilled it into her head. We're like oh, we don't teach bullies here. So like in my head, being a bully was like horrible. Like you never wanted to be a bully.
Yeah.
Like I would mostly get in trouble because like I would just have the dumbest ideas ever. Like I remember, we're not gonna get into my dumb ideas, but that was mostly
let's delve into the dumb idea. What was the? Is there anything that always comes up in family stories? Like I can't believe Jeremy did that, got into trouble for that.
There's a lot.
You want the PG, you want PG-13, you want the R.
So I'll tell the one that's like the crazy story, and that was like in grade 6. In grade 6, I had to take 10 days off at school because me and my buddy, we went to the park and we found this like piece of crutch. And like, I don't know if you know, like at the end of a piece of crutch,
Crutch
there's
that
like,
you walk with.
Okay. Yeah.
there's like a rubber piece at the end.
Yeah.
And we had just found like the metal bar and a piece of crutch. And we were like, you know what? Our goal is to get this rubber piece off. Why? It seemed to be a good idea at the time. And we were like, you know what? Let's do it. So we're at the park and we're smashing it on the ground, doing whatever. And then I kind of just give up and I'm like, I'm done with this. I take it and I just smash it on the ground. It bounces up, hits me in the eye. I had to get like laser surgery. Like my retina was like all messed up. So I had to like spend like 10 days just like in my bed, like in bed rest.
Oh my days.
And then I got
Think
back.
about what you've done.
Patch.
I had like a patch and then I like went back to school and like I had to get like a bunch of work done and like so I like walked in and had my patch and everyone was like, what the fuck did you do?
Who's this guy thinks he's a fucking pirate?
Yeah, that's like when it comes to like the great idea, like Jeremy's great ideas, that's definitely the first.
Is that the only time you've had to have surgery?
Yeah. No. No, I had my collarbone as well.
How'd you do that?
Another crutch.
Now,
You keep attacking him.
it's a little bit worse than a crutch. Basically, Kendall might agree with this. I can be, how can I say? A little bit extra sometimes.
Yeah.
So I was playing.
Extra.
I was playing cards with my family, and I was sitting at the edge of the bed, and I had just won the game.
Yeah.
And I got really excited, and I went, "Yay!" And I lifted my hands, and I fell off the bed, and broke my collarbone.
All from being a sore winner.
Yeah.
Yep.
Humbling victories.
Broken collarbone. Instant karma. Universe is like, you're too powerful right now. Sit down.
Yeah. I think I was like 6 or 5.
Oh,
5,
wow.
6 years. Yeah. Yeah, that was my other surgery. But other than that, no. I never got hurt playing sports. I always got hurt doing like other things.
Playing with a crutch.
Yeah. Playing crutch or like...
Playing crutch. It became a great game after that. It's played all over Canada.
I don't know. Like, I don't know.
The founder, we have him here today,
Yeah.
folks. The founder of the crutch.
Yeah. Crutch Jitz.
Crutch Jitsu. Let's go. Yeah, so that's... Yeah, I had a lot of great ideas when I was a kid.
So you were telling me that when you were going up through the sport, like they didn't have kind of different belt grades for kids. So you just basically stayed a white belt for like ages.
Yeah, so what it was like basically we had like 2 different programs. Like in the kids program, it was like traditional jiu-jitsu, but it wasn't like Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So like it's not like where it is now. Like now, for example, like you look on the wall, there's like a bunch of belts for the kids. There's like gray, yellow, orange, green. And it's not that we didn't have it, but I guess in Canada, we just never like used it. So for me, like I stayed at white belt like 9 years and a half, like almost 10 years. Wow. And like, it was like super long. And it got to the point where the only reason why I actually like moved up was because I went to fight a kid's pans. And like the way the belts was, it was like, that's when the system actually started. And we looked and we're like, well, I'm like a white belt. But on here it says that like if you've been training longer than 2 years, you need an orange belt. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm an orange belt. So I went to like, I fought a kid's pans. I wore an orange belt. And then the next year I went to go do worlds, but I couldn't just put my white belt back on because I had already registered at like orange or green belt. So then I had to get promoted. And that's basically when like all the belts started coming in. And then at that point, my professor was like, you know what, we should probably start doing the belt system. So now in Ottawa, the belt system's back. But yeah,
Well, it's a bit of an interesting case study, isn't it? Because like, especially at Gracie Barra, the idea is that they kind of get a stripe pretty much every month if they kind of train consistently. And I guess the theory behind it is that kids, they just need like a little bit more of a kind of a steadier progression plan where they can see.
Use that positive reinforcement. Adults
Yeah.
need it too, you
Yeah.
know. Same reason why, like back in the day, you might stay a white belt with those stripes for 4 years, and now we give stripes. Well, the newer kind of more modern schools, but it was the same when I was a kid too in California. It was
Right.
the same. We had like, it was like white. It was white, yellow, orange, green. But you had to be 10 to get your orange belt and 13 to get your green belt. So I started training at 5. I had a yellow belt. Like I only got 1 belt in 5 years, right? So when I think I was 9, myself and another one of the students, he had an older brother who got his orange belt, and I had the professor's daughter was my training partner. She got orange belt. They turned 10 before us. They got their orange belts. And me and Daniel, and we were like so mad because we went toe to toe with them all the time. We were like 8 or 9, and we were like, how come we're still yellow belts? We have yellow belts for 3 years. Like as kids, it's so competitive. And he actually got custom made yellow/orange belts for us. We had never seen them before. Wow, and we had like yellow/orange belts, like half and half, or no, like a stripe in the middle or something. And got those belts, and it was like, for us, it was the first ones we've ever seen. It felt so important, but I was like, yeah, I got a new belt. I was still mad I didn't have an orange belt though. I was pissed. I was like, wait till I'm 10, I'm gonna get that orange belt. So it's changed a lot, but most kids don't survive through that. That's why the kids programs were so small. But now the kids programs can flourish because kids are able to feel that positive reinforcement of their actions.
So, in a world where, let's say, that kind of that positive reinforcement didn't exist, like you guys come from, what is it that keeps someone like a kid in jiu-jitsu? Is it that they're just naturally kind of genetically predisposed to wanting to do jiu-jitsu, or has it been a nurture kind of thing where they've met the right kind of people, they've had the right experiences, and that is the thing that keeps them in?
I honestly think it's a mix of a lot of things. One, the environment is a big factor in it. Like for me, like what was giving me a lot of gratification was the different classes I could do. So like, I was always kind of like a strong kid. So when I got to the point where I was beating all the kids in the kids program, then I could train with the adults. And that's what I really found cool. It's like, oh man, I get to like fight adults now. And that's what like really kept me excited. And then there's like the advanced kids program. It's like, oh, now I'm part of like the cool kids. Okay. So it's like, that's kind of how I kept pushing it. And also competition, I always loved competing. And it was really cool to like get to compete a lot, especially at a young age. Like I also played like a bunch of different sport, but I never had like such a team environment, but also in an individual sports setting, if that makes sense. Where like, we would travel as a team, but then when you're on the mat, you're fighting alone. And that's really what I found. Like I really fell in love with the competition side of jiu-jitsu. And I think that's really what kept me going. Like if I didn't compete, I don't think I would still be doing jiu-jitsu right now. But that's not for everyone. My professor Nick really was also a big factor in like why I'm still where I am now.
What was it about him that you think made him such a great instructor that had such a obviously meaningful impact on you?
Him bullying me was like a big
bullying.
Thing. Yeah, him bullying me and like allowing me to help the kids' classes. When I got to a point where I was a big kid, so you would like use me. Like I remember we would teach like the tiny tigers. That's what they were called at the time, where it was like the 3, 4, 5-year-olds. And I wasn't that much older than those kids. Like I was 9, 10 years old, but just the fact that I could show something to them was like
had responsibility.
Really, it was really cool to me. And it's like, then after a while, I was like, okay, well now it's like, you may not be leading the class, but at least, you're helping the instructor. Like it wasn't always like me teaching, but it was always like, I was always on the mat, like helping them. And, after a while I was helping with the after school program where like, there was like one year where they picked me up and I like didn't train. I was just there to help the kids program. And that really helped me as well. With like he gave me a lot of responsibility to build myself into the instructor I am today, and I think that's that's one of the reasons I love him for sure. And he's just made me laugh so much. Like man, so many stories with Nick.
For sure, man. I want to talk to you more about your instructing in a little bit, but at what point did it kind of dawn on you wanted to do jiu-jitsu as a kind of a career? Was there ever a point where you were younger and you're like, I want to do this as when I'm an adult? Or?
Yes, I would say like I played a bunch of different sports as a kid. Like I would do like I played like competitive hockey, soccer, football. I played a lot of things, and there's a lot of times where I didn't know which sport I wanted to choose for like my career, I guess. And then in 2016, I started really winning pretty much everything in Canada, and I had talked to my professors, and I was like, listen, like I think I want to do this, but I'm not sure. And they were like, well, okay. And they're like, go to Kids Pans and see how you do. And that's when the whole belt thing came in. And orange and green belt at the time was like the highest division. It was like, those were the killers. There's like other teammates that went and they fought like gray or yellow belt, and they still did very good. But the orange and green belt was like the highest level.
It's like a kid black belt. It
Yeah,
still is like
basically,
that
yeah.
now. It's a child black belt, yeah.
And then I fought.
And you'd never fought anyone like that before,
No,
right? 'Cause
never.
you'd always been white belt.
Like I had always fought like the same guys basically around Canada because like the scene was very small.
Right.
So then I go to Kit's Pans and I fucking William Tackett. And William, like, it was a good fight. He beat me for sure. I think he choked me. I can't remember. It's been so long. But I remember after the fight, like, he basically smashed everyone in the division. And they came up to me and he was like, man, like, your technique's awesome. And like we like talked a bit and I was like, man, like this guy's really good. And he's like telling me I'm good too. It's like, okay, well, I guess I can do this. Like, I got this. And that's really what helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. And then at what point did you really feel like, oh, this can be like a career of what I'm doing?
It was after Kids Pans. Kids Pans, like, my mom came with me, and like the whole idea was to see, like, you know, am I really one of those top guys, or am I just an athletic kid that can beat up other kids? You know, and that's when I went to Kids Pans, I realized really, like, man, this is amazing. You went, and the Kids Pans was in the pyramid.
Were you 14? You must have been, right?
I was still 14, but I was turning 15 in December. So I was like one of the youngest ones. I think it was in February. So I had just turned 14. I think the division was like 14, 15-year-olds. I can't remember. But I was like the youngest one in that division, and it was like, man, it's like these guys are really good, and I want to be not like them, but like then you kind of look at the pyramid. There's like all the sponsors around. There's so many people in the venue, and then I remember went to Professor Sean Williams' gym, and I was like, man, like, you know, I love traveling. Like, I love doing this, and I want to do this pretty much forever. And then the following year, like, I went to Worlds, and after that, like, I just never stopped. That's really when I like got clicked, and I remember there was like a time where I told my parents, I'm like, yeah, like, I'm gonna do this forever, and they're like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine they were pretty supportive after they've seen you put in so many, like, countless hours over all those years, right?
Yeah, they're a really big reason why, you know, I am where I am. You know, it's like they helped me a lot understand that, like, you know, at first it was a sport. So at first, like, my parents were very like, education comes first. And at first that's what it was, like, it was only a sport. But once I decided to really choose to make it my life, they you know, they've helped me, and, you know, they're the reason I am who I am today. They're the reason why, you know, I'm at Kendall. The reason, you know, they've helped me out so much over the years. Like, I can't thank them enough. You know, that at the end of the day, they're the reason I started jiu-jitsu, because they put me in. You know, so yeah, my parents have been.
Have they ever stepped onto the mats as well and done some jiu-jitsu with you?
So my mom trained 2 classes, and I remember I trained 1 class with her, and she triangled me, and then I think, she triangled me, and in the middle of the triangle, she like punched me in the nose, and like gave me a bloody nose.
Combat jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
She's ahead of her time.
Yeah, trained with her once, gives me a bloody nose, and then like never trained again. But I'm trying to get them back into it now. But
Just trying to get back at your mum. You're like, I'll get you next time.
yeah. Honestly, that's probably what it is. I remember there's a time where like I think I was like 13 or 14, but like my dad went to go throw me in the pool, and I like got on his back and like somehow ended up in Omoplata, and then he was just kind of like, what the fuck is this? He was like,
Change your mind.
I'm never doing this again.
You're like, I'm the captain now.
They're so in tune with things, though. Like, they've done a really good job at like staying informed and involved in jiu-jitsu. Like, the reason we met, they like helped him go to this camp in Mexico, and then we met there. And then when he said he was moving out to be with me, they were like really excited, and I was in touch with his mom, and like they're really plugged in, even though they don't train. So it's really cool.
Yeah, they're for sure like my biggest fans, and that's you know, that's. I just can't thank them enough. They're amazing for sure.
That's an amazing one.
Yeah.
And then, kind of tell me the story that led to you kind of leading to being here. So, when did the catalyst of that start?
Okay, so here, like in Europe?
Here in Europe,
Okay, so basically what happened was I spent from June to December, I spent 6 months in California. And before that, I spent a couple months in Houston and had, you know, a crazy life things that happened there. So
And that was your first extended time in the States.
yeah, like I
Like you'd
had,
visited, but you hadn't.
it was my first time like away from home, basically for a long period of time. Like I went, and the pandemic hit, like the whole like restrictions in Canada were really big. So it basically until like August, there was nothing at the gym. And then August 2020, things started to open up in the States. And basically I told my professor, I was like, listen, like, you know, I want to go compete again. Like things are opening up. Like I want to go out there. And he's like, okay. Well, I needed to make money if I wanted to go to the States. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to run a 10-week kids camp. I'll run it alone and I'll use the money. And then after that, I'll go to the States. He was like, okay, cool. So I did 10 weeks of camp. And as anyone
9 to 5
yeah,
with like 40
9 to
kids
5 was
alone.
like, yeah, that was crazy. And after that camp, I was just kind of like tired of everything. Like there was the restrictions, that was like a big part of it. Like we had to like have a secret knock just to get into the gym. And then it was just a lot of like stress and pressure. So then in September, I was like, okay, I'm going to go for 10 days. I was supposed to leave 10 days to go to Houston. I was supposed to do Oklahoma City Open, then fly to Houston, train at Gracie Baja West Chase, just to help me like get ready in between Oklahoma City and Pan Am's. And then I was supposed to go back home. That was like the original plan. And then I got there, and you know, luckily Professor Upiano, like one of the first days, he's like, "Hey man, do you want to stay longer?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So then I ended up staying there 2 months, and then I went back home, and then I drove down in February. I had some car problems, so then I had to go back home in May, and I was like really kind of upset with that because I had just spent like 5 months training at the best gym in the world. You know, I was training with like Professor Pedro, who's,
Pedro Mourinho.
Double gold.
And Draculino.
Yeah, it's just the best guys in the world. And I really fell in love with being an athlete. And I just didn't want to go back home. Like I was supposed to go back home and help my friend do this pool installing business. So I was supposed to like work this like labor job all summer. And I just like didn't want to do it. So then I like basically like Googled, like I had someone tell me that there's like this Gracie Baja job website or something. So I just Googled like Gracie Baja jobs. And then I saw like Gracie Baja Newport Beach. And I was like, wait a minute.
I didn't even know this ad was running, by the way. I had no idea it existed.
I was like,
or this like job posting that we had.
I was like, wait, I think so I like, wait, that's Professor Kendall's school. I met her in Mexico. So I like
We had
sent her.
met like one day, and when I met him, I thought he was a little punk too. I didn't even think.
We talked
oh,
for
Canadian punk.
yeah, we talked for literally 2 minutes.
I was like, who's this Canadian like 18-year-old kid? He's like, oh my god, yeah.
And I sent her the screenshot of the job, and I'm like, hey, you guys still need help? She was like, yeah. How soon can you be here? I'm like, well, I have a 2 weeks quarantine. Give me like 2 weeks to get my things together, and I can be there in 4 weeks. She was like, cool. Let me know when you book your flight. I'm like, sick.
Nice.
It was perfect timing for us. We were really in need of someone. We had just lost somebody. We needed somebody. It was like everything was exactly. So as soon as he reached out, I was like, when can you come? Like, come over. Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
And like at the time, I was like super excited because I thought I was going to work a labor job, but then I have this job.
Well, you were
like,
still in Texas.
Yeah, I was
but
still in
he
Houston.
knew he had to go home.
yeah.
So he was like, shoot, what am I going to do? He's like, well, I'm in Texas. I got to go home. I got to do this. I got to work for 2 weeks to make money. And then I'll come back. And I was like, all right, see you when you get here.
Yeah, and I remember when I went to Kids Pens, like I was driving around Los Angeles with my mom, and I told her, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to live here one day. And she was like, okay, cool, like whatever. So I guess you're crazy, but okay. And like when I hit up Kendall, I was like, wait, like I'm actually
Gonna land in LAX.
Like,
Picked him up, went to In-N-Out. It was great.
Yeah, it was sick.
Important first stop, you know.
Yeah, I spent 6 months of getting bullied by Kendall and Professor Saul, and you know, it was. But
Well, he started working too in the schools right away. He's a great program director, a great coach, and just wanted to kind of do all the jobs and like learn everything. That was really exciting to me because everyone wants to be an athlete, but before you can make a living as an athlete, like you got to figure out what you're gonna do. And he was always the kind of person who was like I knew it was going to be a good fit because when we talked on the phone about him coming, he wasn't like, how many exact hours, where exactly am I staying, how much what is my exact schedule? And to be fair, those are fair questions. Yeah. But in the jiu-jitsu world, like sometimes you don't know. I was just like, look, look, we're going to take care of you. I don't know exactly. We have 3 schools about to open a 4th one. I don't know exactly what things will look like, but you're going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Just get here. We'll figure it out. And he was like, okay. And I was like, all right, it's a good fit. Then he got there. He did a bunch of different things, was teaching privates, and was like, figured out how to have a great life for himself there.
Volunteering.
Because he was, because he was willing to just kind of like figure it out and like do whatever it took. Like when he says he went home and before he went to Texas, and he was like, I did 10 weeks of kids camps. It's like most people are not willing to do 10 weeks of 9 to 5 with 45 kids by themselves just to make money to pay for a flight to get to the States and like be here and have a new experience. That's why so many people who say they want to do what they want to do, it's not that we don't want to hear that people are inspired or get excited for them, but it's more like, okay, well, show me. Like, because we hear hundreds of people tell us that all the time. And so when he was like, I'll come, I don't care. I'll sleep on the mats. I'll do this. I'll do that. I was like, all right, come over. We'll figure it out. And now he's one of like the most important people in my life. It happened really fast. So,
like for me, it was really like, I had lived this crazy experience in Houston where, I was surrounded by the best athletes in the world and the best jiu-jitsu competitors in the world. And that was really focusing on the athlete part of it. And, I always loved being like an instructor as well. And I've been, in the business for so long where like I started when I was 6. So I've seen a lot of things and I've been on the mats for so long. And then when I got to California, I was literally like, I'm broke. Like, I don't care. I'll do anything. And like, it was really cool to have the opportunity to learn something else than just, how to, do jiu-jitsu and like how to teach. Like at the time we needed someone to take care of like the memberships and the program directing. And I was just like, man, I've never done that before. But, it's like, it's part of the jiu-jitsu world. If you want to own the school one day or, it's like, it's a big part of it. So I wanted to learn like right away. And
this is like one big internship.
Yeah, basically, like the way I looked at it,
internship.
The way I looked at it was like, so I graduated high school in January 2020. It's like I kind of looked at it as like, well, I may not be going to university, but this was my schooling. And so I spent 6 months in California, learned a bunch of things, met amazing people who were like, not best friends. And then
did well competitively too, like won on Fight to Win and did a bunch of really cool stuff. So it was great.
And then after that, I went back home and it was supposed to be only for the holidays. And then we had planned this like crazy trip across
cross-country road trip. Yeah, I was over training at PSF for the Daisy Fresh guys. He was going to drive down, meet me there. We were going to drive across country. But we ran into some visa issues. So now we're reworking on that.
I was like, I basically took all my money. I was like, you know what? Like, I need a car. So I put like all my money down. I bought a car, and I was like, okay, I'm driving. Like, let's go. And then unfortunately that didn't work. We had some visa complications, and then after that, at the time, the restrictions in Canada were still very big. Everything was still locked down. So I was like, man, like I can't really train. I can't do this. Like, what am I gonna do?
But I had this trip planned, and literally he's calling me. We're talking about all these problems because he's supposed to meet me. We literally was like the day of, or the 2 days before. He's like, I can't come. And so I'm rebooking all my flights because now I'm not doing a road trip. I don't have a car. I have all these seminars booked, so I'm flying around. But immediately I was like, book a flight to the UK. I'm gonna go there for 3 weeks. You're coming with me because
you want to go to Europe? I'm like, yeah, sure.
I was like, you can't come here, but we can go there because you're going to be depressed because you can't train, you can't work, you can't do anything. I was like, I'm going to go there for a couple weeks. You're coming with me. I'll get you on the Grapplefest card. We'll compete. It's going to be great. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, let's do it. And then basically I set up this camp for here. I've went a few times to go train with my friend at my friend's place, and basically an hour in the country, and I was training at in his garage / ranch with a full CrossFit gym inside and some mats, and it was really cool. And
special knock to get in again.
Yeah, we basically it was my first training camp back home in over a year, so that was really cool as well to be back. And then now I'm here.
Well, and you were able to put it together because we had done a lot of different training camps in California. So basically, he went back to Canada and was like, "Okay, I know how to do this now. Let me put together a camp for myself." So it's really special to see these things develop because not only was he doing that for himself, but now he's modeling that for all the guys he trains with, right? And it just kind of elevates everybody involved.
Yeah.
Sometimes it sounds like a little bit like pretentious, or not pretentious is not the right word, but like almost like I'm so humanitarian, like that kind of thing. But it really is like bigger than just us. Like everything that we do ripples into like everybody else. So it was really cool to see him do that for himself and then everybody else, and then come over here and meet me. And man, we haven't trained since December. So we met here at the end of February, and in a short 2 months, he was a completely different athlete, like totally different athlete, like just absolutely incredible, like progress in 8 weeks. And so really excited for him.
It was like, it was really cool because it was like, back in Canada, like the no-gi scene, it's not that it's not big. Like, there's amazing schools like, TriStar, 10th Planet. But in Canada, there's still a lot of like most tournaments, there's no heel hooks. So the heel hook game is like very small. So in a very short period of time, I had to like, luckily I have really good training partners back home. And we basically just like train like crazy. And I'm like, thankfully I had Professor Sowell's like log in for BJ Fanatics and just kind of like, I just sat down, like I caught COVID like the second day of my training camp, and I was just like, God damn it. So I just like literally watched all of the instructionals, and then after that I just built a game and then came here.
Well, so, I think you had a taste of what it was like to be a real professional full-time athlete while he was in California. Because he was there like to be an athlete and to train. So when he went home, even as things changed, maintained that discipline of like, okay, now I know what this feels like. I don't care where I am. I know how to recreate this with whatever circumstances I have. And not many people are able to do that. So it was really impressive.
Yeah. The other big thing too is like, I've always been like a big gi guy. I was never like no gi. Like, I think, I started really training seriously no gi when I was like training at West Chase a bit. But even then I was like 50-50. But then when I got to California, I trained a lot of no-gi, but then I did like, I fought Worlds, I did like a big camp for gi. And then I just told myself, I was like, hey, like I'm coming back in January and we're doing like a big camp for ADCC West Coast Trials. So I was like, okay, like this year, 100% no-gi. So then when I got back home, I was like, oh, like they're doing this camp for West Coast. Like I can't be here and like, not get better and just like focus on gi and then go back and like kind of be stuck behind, like stuck in the past. Like that was something I really didn't want to do. So I kind of like, thankfully I have like a great team, like not just back home, but in Newport Beach as well. That really helped me. Like Professor Kendall helped me a lot. Professor Sowell, like, and I was like texting Sowell, like, hey, like, what are you working on this week?
So we're doing a camp over in California. He's basically recreating it on the East Coast in Canada, having his guys help him. And it was really, really cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. It was a bit crazy at first, but we made it. So it was really, that was awesome.
Awesome, man. I wanted to touch on one of the first things you said there, which was, one of the first times pretty much like you'd left home, like properly. For a lot of people, that's going to university, right? That first time they left home. And if it was like, let's say one of your mum's friends and their kid was, same age as you and they're going to university, they'd be super proud, right? But we all know that first year of university is going out, getting smashed, drinking, going on the binge. But the person would seem very, that's an amazing thing to do, to go to university. However, when your mum would say, my son's gone to Texas to go fight a load of guys, they'd be like, that's strange. It sounds like he's going down a dark path. But in reality, like what you're doing is so much like on a different high level. There's just still, I think, a misconception around.
Honestly, a lot of people, like, not that they judge me, but they like didn't understand because I had saved up that money from the summer camps. I think I had saved up like a couple thousand, but, and I basically stayed in Texas and I was like I was making zero money. I was just like training. And that's like the part where people found crazy. We're like, man, like not only you're not in university, you don't have a job, you're just like training. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. And it's like, people saw that and they, a lot of people think like, like you need to make a lot of money. It's like, no, like, my professor says this a lot of times. It's like, hard times build strong men. Well, like I was like broke, like living on like, my friend's floor basically, where I have like a little mattress.
Just
and
draining your savings with like no money.
Yeah, I had like no money, like, financially, it's a very smart decision. It was great. But I was just basically like not wasting all my money, but I would say.
Well, it was draining down and you
Yeah.
knew there was going to run out.
Yeah.
And he couldn't work because he's in the States coming from Canada, so he can't work.
Yeah. And that's why like I went home, made a little bit more money, and then went back.
Yeah.
And that's really just like, I just made enough money to survive. Like the jiu-jitsu diet, like the chicken, beans, rice, like that's what it was. And, and that was a really cool part because I never had experienced that. Like I never trained full time. I was training at night, but I never trained like during the day. I was at school. And that was really the first time where I was a full-time athlete. And that part was really cool. That's really what I fell in love with.
Well, and it teaches you also, like I had a lot of athletes have a period of time like that. I had a period of time like that too. And it teaches you a lot about money management. It teaches you how to live within your means, especially if your parents have been supporting you your whole life, which most people, that's the case, right? So it teaches you a lot about money management. It teaches you what you really need and like what the essentials really are. But more than that, I found for myself, and I know for him too, is it really like, it shows you whether or not you really want it. Because if it's not comfy anymore, then you learn really quickly if it's actually what you want to do. Because a lot of people find out very fast. It's like, oh, actually, I don't like this as much as I thought, But the beautiful thing about that is that even then when you do start doing better financially, like for example with me, then once things started doing better financially for me, if I would have really hard training days or if I would start to doubt my capabilities or things like that, I always had that proof. I was like, no, because I was willing to do it when the circumstances were like this and I still loved my life. So I know, like I have that proof of concept that this is going to work for me, you know? So that was a really, really impactful time. I think it was like I think that people in general, like you said, like tough times make strong men or strong women, strong men.
Yeah, strong people.
Strong people, right? We have everyone's included. And in life in general, but especially to be an athlete in a sport where it is not like you sign $1 million contract. You need to know that you really want to do it. And you don't know until you're tested. You think you know, but until you're tested, you just don't know for sure. So
I think another aspect too is like, I was loving it when I was broke. And then that really showed me, it's like, man, it's like, yeah, okay, this is a little bit hard when I'm broke, but imagine if I can make money through this. Now I'm doing what I love and I'm making money through something that I love. Like that's what was like really opened my eyes and was like, okay, like, yeah, like this is what I want to do every single day. And like, that's why like when I went to California, it was a lot of like the first few months, like I wasn't, like I slowed down my training a little bit to really make sure I was focusing a lot on like
learning all the parts of business and like a big internship, like we said,
Yeah, and that way it was like, man, it's like, you know what? That part, you might be slowing down your training, but that part's essential for you to like to be one day where she is now, And that's really what like opened my eyes to becoming like, to doing jiu-jitsu.
It's hard though too, like we said with parents, like, his mom's like telling her friend like, oh yeah, Jeremy's over there doing this, he doesn't even have any money, like all those things. It's hard. It's almost like you ever hear like people say like, don't date for potential. Like you don't like date a guy and you're like, oh well one day he's gonna like make a lot of money. Like you tell your mom like, oh well he's gonna be a famous athlete one day. All those kinds of things. Like but when you can surround yourself with people who have already walked that path, then it becomes a reality and it becomes possible. And then you can really see. So he did that in Texas, he did that in California, and then he went back to Canada and was like showing that to other people too. And so again, that ripple effect gets bigger and bigger, where it's like, let's get a little bit more, like, let's stop glamorizing, like being a broke athlete forever. Yeah. Like, yes, it's important to go through that, but surround yourself with people who have moved on to the next section of their life and persevered through that, so that you have that proof of like, okay, I can do this, and I have someone to help figure out how. Then talking to your parents is a little easier, right? Yeah. And then like talking to friends or whatever is a little bit easier to do, because university is a proven path, like worldwide, globally. It's like you do this, you get a job, you make money, you have a family, you're done. Jiu-jitsu is not a proven path the way that like soccer, football, soccer, other sports are. Even then, people think of it as a pipe dream, right? But at least it's like, oh, well, this person's rich and famous, so there's a possibility. Jiu-jitsu, no one really knows that yet. So we have to have people around us that help us stay motivated and inspired, but also we can point to the people that are important in our life and like, no, this is really a viable career path. Like, look who's doing it, X, Y, Z. So that's a big, I think it's very important.
It seems that side of things is going through such a big development stage right now, because I think before it was like, become a great athlete, open a school, do really well.
Yeah.
And now it's like, then it was like, become a great athlete, make an instructional, do really well.
Yeah.
And now it's like Gordon Ryan's between sponsored 100 grand, right? It's like, be a great athlete, get sponsored loads, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll keep going like along those lines where, people can make, retirement money by the time they need to retire as an athlete.
And also learning how to be really diverse, like doing other projects. Like when I was a purple belt, the idea of a sponsor paying me $1,000 a month for something, I couldn't even, I was like, for what? Why? Like, why would they do that? Like, yeah, give me the money, but like, why? And now it's like, and then the idea of having multiple brands doing that, it's like, it's so wild to me. But then it's like, learning when you go through that really hard time of what do you really need to survive, and like, spending money on things you like, obviously like rewarding yourself with things like that. But how do we put money in savings? How do we start investing at a young age? Do we think about buying real estate when that becomes a viable option, or getting together with 3 people and doing it? Do we think about, like, I'm about to create an NFT, instructionals, like he and I are going to make a kids instructional. He's a purple belt, well, he'll be a brown belt soon, but he's a purple belt. Purple belts don't make instructionals that do well, right? Typically.
Yeah.
But instead of saying, hey, I know you're really good at lasso. He could do a great lasso instructional that would blow others out of the water, but it wouldn't sell because he doesn't have a name yet. But can he do a kids games instructional with me? I have a little bit more of a name that helps it sell. He's doing the whole thing. I'm not doing it. I'm just doing it with him. And then he can start to be more financially stable. Like these are the kinds of things where it takes a little bit of creativity, but if you want it, the opportunity is there for the people that are going to fight for it.
Or even like you with your apparel stuff as well, right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, your apparel. Like
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff,
merchandise, like all these different things, but diversify yourself. Because man, what happens when you get hurt? I had an injury in October of 2020, 2020, and I couldn't compete for like 5 months. I was used to, making like $3,000 to $5,000 a month just off of if I was going to do a fight or not, or something like that. And I couldn't have that income anymore. Luckily, my life doesn't depend on that income, but for a lot of people it does. And so we have to diversify for those times and save for when those times come. Like, I have savings. I don't need to go fight this month. You see so many athletes go and fight when they're hurt, or when they're not training well, or when they're just not happy, they're not stable, just because they need to pay the bills. And so if you start now building up your career, then once he's a black belt competitor, he's not going to have to worry about that. And that's what sets you apart. Because when you can do that, you can train happier, you live a better lifestyle, and in my opinion, you perform better as a result anyway. Yeah.
How accessible is that kind of, like, all the things you talked about there, that, it's education, it's not knowledge. How accessible is that for an upcoming athlete? Do they know about that? Or
that's the amazing
who teaches you that?
That's the amazing part about jiu-jitsu. Like, there's this big misconception in jiu-jitsu where, like, you're broke until you're a black belt. And, like, jiu-jitsu...
Most black belts are still broke. That's the problem.
It's like, there's the amazing part about jiu-jitsu compared to, like, I know about football, but like hockey, for example, it's like, I can't just go and, hit up Wayne Gretzky on Instagram and be like, hey, Wayne, do you want to go play some hockey? It's like, no, like that would never happen. Or like Sid Crosby, or like the top level guys, I'll never be able to do that. In jiu-jitsu, you have that chance where you can literally, like, example, like, Professor Kendall or Professor Pedro, like, you can surround yourself with the best people in the world. And like, I strongly believe that, like, if you surround yourself with 4 successful people, you'll become the 5th. Mm-hmm. And that's the power of jiu-jitsu. We're like, you know what? Like, Kendall's doing all these things. Well, I can just book my flight to California, go train at Gracie Barra Newport Beach, and I'll be with Kendall every day. Well,
and there's different pathways, right? We happened to meet at a camp, and then he happened to reach out, and I was like, I met this kid one time, but I was like, he was like, I'll come and just for free, I'll leave at the mat, like whatever, I'll volunteer my time, whatever you need me to do. And I was like, all right, let's see how it goes. Like, come out and then we'll test it out. Like, no promises, but like, let's see how it goes. Make yourself available and basically, do what you can to learn. But there's a lot of different examples. Not everyone will see your DM. Not everyone will say yes. But you have to, like in my opinion, you never know. Shoot your shot. Like, you never know what experience is going to give you the next opportunity or connection that you need. Like in 2018, late 2017, early 2018, I was absolutely dead broke as a purple belt. Absolutely dead broke. And I like somehow made it over to the UK, and I traveled around and I met a bunch of people. Like, literally was going to like Sainsbury and getting like cans of beans, and that was my dinner. Like, broke. And I made some of the most important connections of my life because I had done that. And now those are the kind of connections where now in 2022, I'm back in the UK, and so many of the people I met are like, can I have you for a seminar? Not just can I have you for a seminar, but can I make sure I pay you really well and I set up privates for you and I do this because they know me and I made that connection. Whereas if I hadn't gone out of my way to do that, and I could have easily just stayed home, and I missed the no-gi worlds, I missed out on some other stuff to do that, I wouldn't have the same opportunities. So, but another example is like when I was having a hard time with figuring out stuff as like a brown belt, and I was a brand new black belt in 2019, and I won double gold at the no-gi worlds, and I was making zero on sponsorships a month. Zero. I like could not get a company to pay me, and I was like doing extremely well. I had a social following. Like, I just couldn't do it. Gordon Ryan was posting something in his stories about like athletes making money. I literally just DM'd him, and I was like, hey, I have this question. I don't know what to ask for. I don't know what. He has been one of the most influential people. Like, say what you want. He's crazy, whatever. He says some crazy stuff. He was just one of the only people who was ever straightforward and like, look, this is what people normally make. This is what you should ask for. This is what I think you should tell this person or that person because of my experience with them. This is how you do it ethically, so you're not screwing people over, but like, this is what you should say. And it was so helpful. Now, I will say, like, he knows this because I've told him this, not everybody is that open. I've had people literally just like be like, oh no, I'm not willing to discuss that. But that's the shoot your shot part. I'm willing to ask to give the information because I know that I want to help other athletes do that. So I want to find out as much as I can, do as well as I can, and then help other athletes do the same. So the way that he reached out to me and was like, I'm just going to make myself available. What can I do? Yeah. Now has been able, other people have seen what he's done, and I've had other athletes come and be like, hey, can I just come train for a while? And then those things start to develop. So like education, but education through people who have already been successful. And that is the interesting thing in jiu-jitsu. In a lot of sports, you can't do that. We're small enough now still where you can really reach out to the people that are already doing well.
And the big thing is like exchanging something. Like, for example, like when I went to California, it wasn't like, hey, Kendall, can I come to California? You can teach me everything and I'm just going to train. It's like, no, like this, listen, like I've been teaching kids since I'm 12 years old. Like, you know what? I'm going to like run your kids program. Like, I'm going to run your kids camp. But at the same time, like,
can you help mentor me, and what can I do to help you? Even when I do super fights, like this is so huge, and something that really bothers me with athletes is like the exchange of energy. When I do a super fight, if I'm offered a certain amount and I want more than what they're offering me, which is most of the time, like I'll be like, hey, this is a number I would love to get to if this is possible. But what can we do to get me here? How many posts would you like to see? Do you want me to come a day early and do extra interviews or do extra social media? Do you want me to stay a day late and do this or that? Like, do you have, a student that would like really like to do a private that I can give them a good deal on? Like, all these kinds of things. It's not discounting yourself. It's an exchange of energy. And then once you build that relationship with the person, like once I fight on somewhere and they know that I go hard on the promo, I show up, I give a good fight, win or lose, people are tuning in, all those kinds of things, they're going to have me back. And I usually don't really have to negotiate with them the second time around. Like this just happened with a recent organization. The second time they said the same number. I was like, hey, can we do this? Can we get to this number? It was a yes, absolutely no problem, because they know the value. So that's exactly the same thing that Jeremy is doing with me, but I was the same as him. I practiced that at the colored belts. Same thing if I go and teach a seminar, I'm like, hey, do you want me to come early, stay late? What do you need? Like all those kinds of things. Because then once you get to the black belt level, you already have a good reputation. You have a good like relationship with a lot of people. People talk in jiu-jitsu. It's very small. Everyone knows everybody's stuff in jiu-jitsu. And it feels good. It feels right. And you get your way more often too. You make more money, so.
And like it just makes it way more exciting. Like we were talking with Professor Tom yesterday. He said something that like really struck me. It's like, if you put 9 years into basically anything in life, like 9 years in university or 9 years into whatever, you're gonna make $100K a year in most things. You know, it's like, well, why not jiu-jitsu?
So why in jiu-jitsu do we glamorize being broke?
Yeah,
People are like, oh yeah, I do this, I barely get to eat. Like, and
I'm
it's
living
like,
with 15 guys in one room. It's like, that's not cool. Like, it's cool that
that doesn't inspire your
Yeah.
students to want to do it too, you know?
Yeah.
Like if you want your students to aspire to open a school or to be athletes, like that makes them be like, oh heck no, I'm going to go back to university like my mom said.
Yeah, that's cool if it's like the origin story that you eventually get out of.
Yeah,
It's like that
exactly.
one that, you know, I started from having nothing, you know, eating the tin of beans,
Yeah.
and now I'm here. But if it's just like, yeah, just
Started
staying
from the
there forever
bottom.
and just dedicated, like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, like Professor Kendall talks a lot about it, about like, man, like, let's make jiu-jitsu cool by like, you know, making money from it. And it's like, you know what? If I go to a fight and I'm doing all these things to promote the fight, well, it makes me more excited to fight as well. You know, it's like, yeah, more people want to watch me, but it's like, cool, I just did all this press and now I'm like, I'm super hyped to go like compete. And it just makes everything more fun. It makes all the exchanges better, and it just
Yeah,
makes,
and you don't have to be a jerk to gain traction. I think a lot of people think that too. Like you have to be the bad guy or be crazy, and that's one way, absolutely, and no hate on that. If that's how you make your money, that's cool. But I don't really, it doesn't feel authentic to me. I don't really like it. So there's other ways you can do it. Like I already know Jeremy, like that's not his style either, but I know how he operates within relationships and I know that he'll be able to be successful as a result. It's like if you're willing to give, like that always comes back around. It may not even be immediately, right? Like you may do a lot. It's always going to come back. And I think that's something that young athletes forget a lot, and or they just don't think about it, or no one has advised them. Or they don't really love what they do, so it doesn't feel good, you know, to give. And I'm not talking about being taken advantage of or doing a lot of unpaid work forever, or like all that kind of thing. It has to be like reasonable. But where that part means that you need to be with people you trust, you know, and like people are not going to take advantage of you. Like with him coming with me, he knows there's an exchange. I'm not just going to be like, yeah, I work for free forever. That's great. Thank you. I know you like teaching, so you can just keep doing that. You know, there's got to be a trust and a relationship. And that comes with trial and error too, and intuition and following your gut.
Yeah. And you also can't be afraid to fail. Like you're going to fail. It's going to happen, you know, like.
You can always change your mind. That's my favorite catchphrase of my whole life. You can always change your mind. He could always go back to Canada and be like, you know what, I'm going to go to school. Like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Or go back to Texas or move here, or like, you know, you could always change your mind. So no time is wasted. You're always learning.
You also have to have the confidence of like, you know what, like, yeah, I might be a color belt. You know, I might not be like, you know, the best in the world or the Pedro Marino double gold no gi black belt world champ, but it's like, you know what, I'm gonna teach a decent kids class. So you know what, listen, I'll go help you out with the kids class, but now can you teach me how to become the best version of myself so that one day I can make and do a little bit of what you're doing right now. And I think that's like the big part of like, you know, people, they kind of look up to certain people because like they make money off like talking shit and all this stuff. It's like, man, then they like, you know, jiu-jitsu is about being a good person as well.
Yeah, and gain skills and leverage them. You don't have to have the coolest triangle in the world. Whatever skills you have, like some people are better in business than they are in jiu-jitsu, and they do really, really well financially.
Yeah.
And so that's another example. When you say like, oh, where does that come from? How accessible is it? Like another thing is get passionate or if you don't have it over here yet, get passionate over here. Go do some research on podcasts. Build a great podcast. Build a great YouTube channel. Like do some merch. Like there's so many. You know, or if you're the greatest kids coach in the world, do privates or consulting on how to be a kids instructor. There are so many avenues. So get passionate about something else while this keeps cooking over here, you know, and then exchange that with people. Maybe this person needs help with their kid. Like I really needed help running summer camps. We run great schools, but that was something that we lacked in summer camps and things like that. So, hey, teach me this and then let me teach you more about takedowns or whatever, you know, it's like not always perfectly.
I needed a lot of help from this.
And it's not perfectly clear cut like that all the time, but
it's not so defined and laid out like that.
Right, and you see it when you look back, right? You see it more when you look back. But if there's the trust and the energy exchange, like of information, it's always going to work out, you know?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. It's almost like just like on the mats, there's a mentorship in that you're under your professor. It's like that as well as you guys are talking about here as athletes, both coming up together, learning whether that's, the business side of things, the marketing kind of self-promotion kind of things, how to manage your money when you're making it, how to manage when you're not making it,
It's like, okay, like now I'm like to the point where like, okay, it's like now I have these tools to, I know a little bit on how to make money. Okay, well now I'm going to start making money, but how do I make sure on the long term I can keep making money? And that's like the big thing.
I have a good friend of mine I was talking to the other day who's making some money off of super fights, like, and this is a little bit newer for him. I was like, you have a savings account? Like, you should open a savings account, but not in a patronizing way. It's more of just like, no one's ever told you to do this.
Yeah.
I had very business savvy parents. And so I had a lot of help when you talk about access and education, stuff like that. I had a lot of help, and I still have a lot of help from my parents. I'm 24 and I talk to my mom about this stuff all the time. So I'm very lucky, which is why I want to help other athletes too who don't have that. But when people are not informed about this stuff growing up, or their parents are not really involved in their finances, or maybe they're not close or whatever, their coach is not informed, no one tells them, hey, put away like 30% of what you're making if you can, or as much as you can, because what's going to happen in August of 2022 when you have an injury and you can't fight for 3 months and you have no money, and or like open an account online with like an investment. You don't have to know anything about investments. Just put $100 a month in there. If you start now, it's going to have such incredible compounding interest rather than starting in 35 years when you get married, or 30 years. In 30 years, when you're 30 years old or 35 and you're getting married, and now your wife's like, hey, we should probably start, a Vanguard account or whatever. Starting those kinds of things. We're not taught as athletes. And I think a lot of really professional sports have people hired to kind of help people manage their finances and things like that. Jiu-Jitsu, we're not at that level, but rather than moaning and complaining about it, we can take ownership of the responsibility of that and help each other and talk about it more. So I think that's definitely coming. It's
like, professor talked, like, example, yesterday during a seminar, she talks a lot about, like, there's the professor job and there's the student job as well. It's the same thing as an athlete. It's like, there's all the tools you need out there, but you have to go get them. And it's like, that's a lot of times what people are forgetting. It's like, man,
we live in the age of Google.
Yeah,
my God.
Just Google it.
We live in the age of the internet. Like, we have all the information. Is it hard? And do I get lazy about it? Of course. Like, I'm like, yeah, I know I could Google this, but I don't feel like doing it right now. But then in 5 years, I'm going to be like, man, I should have started that account. Or I should have done this. I should have done that. And I know that I've had that feeling before. So now I'm a little bit less, less prone to putting things off.
Yeah. And now it gives you the great opportunity to help those kind of like Jeremy, like your friends, and being able to say, hey, do you have a savings account, and not say it patronizingly because you've been there, and then it's been like, oh well, you've seen other people there, and like you know how important it is.
For sure.
Yeah.
We could talk honestly for another hours and stuff easily, but we've already hit an hour there, but I wanted to ask Jeremy about Gracie Barra, because you've not always come up in Gracie Barra, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of as a closing up kind of thing, how has it been going from like I'm not sure if it was a different affiliate, but coming towards Gracie Barra and the culture there? Yeah,
so I started with Team Hensel Gracie. I was there for almost 11 years. And then I switched, and at first we weren't too sure like, what team we were going to be. And when we decided to be Gracie Barra, there was like multiple reasons why. The big one was like we wanted to make a bang, and Gracie Barra is the biggest team in the world. At the time still is the number one ranked team in the world, and it was really cool to be able to use the resources of Gracie Barra. Like, example, like I've been Gracie Barra since January 2019, so I'm still very green in Gracie Barra.
We met a month later, right? It's crazy how those things happen.
I spent like a year like kind of teaching, like growing, and like what happened was my first year in Gracie Barra, I went to I fought this guy's name was Luca Romacci. He was the number one ranked blue belt at the time. And, he beat me. It was like a 50-50 match. And he basically, he beat me 2-0. I just couldn't get out of 50-50 because I didn't have like enough training partners to put me in that position to hit that technical side apart. So like right away, I like used the resources of Gracie Barra. I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go. Like, I was like sleeping in my car. I went to Montreal and I was training with like Professor Glenn and Professor Bruno. They helped me out a lot. And then after that, Gracie Barra is so amazing because there's so many resources with it, not just like as an athlete, but as an instructor, and like every side of Gracie Barra, like I talk about it a lot. It's like there's a lot of resources. And example, like I went to the camp. When my camp, what happened basically was like, I went to Europeans, and then after that, my professor was supposed to go. He couldn't go, so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put all my money and I'm going to go to this camp. And I'm going to meet a bunch of these people. Like, I'm going to meet these top guys. Like, that's where
1 month after they changed teams.
Yeah.
Like, right away.
Right away. And it was like, okay, well, now the pandemic hadn't hit yet. And it was really just to create those connections. So that, like, yeah, I'm in Ottawa, but let's say, you know what, I want to go spend a week in Houston. Well, now I have the connections to go to Houston. I have that network to be able to go to these places. And that camp, like, I can't say enough about that camp. Like, the Gracie Baja Adventure Camp, there's one coming up in March. Like,
So cool.
It's super expensive, but
it's expensive for broke athletes. Let's make that. It's not expensive for like people with jobs.
Yeah, it's not even that expensive. Like,
it's really not
It's expensive too. It's not.
It's like you look at the price and like your first idea is like, oh shit, but then it's like every single penny is worth it. Like, you get to not just train with these people and learn with like these high level athletes, but you get to like I was sitting down eating dinner with Professor Hummel Hall. Like, man, I was like watching him when I was a kid on YouTube and like fantasy. And I was like, man, this guy's so cool. Now I'm like eating dinner with him, like spending time with him. And Gracie Baja like helped me build such a strong network of people to not just help me, but to help the entire team and get better as a team.
Yeah.
And like, I look at where Ottawa is now. Now we have like, one of the biggest growing teams in Canada, in Ontario at least. And those connections were made because like
massively supported.
Yeah. It's like, I can't thank Gracie Baja enough. Like,
you have a family. It sounds so cliche, but you have a family everywhere. When I travel to do seminars, I do seminars at all kinds of schools. But any time I walk into a GB school, like I'm immediately at home. I have immediate family. I don't know exactly what it is. Like I couldn't put a word on it, but it's, you have shared values. You have a shared experience on the mat. We teach the same. We have certain kinds of people fit into GB schools, and certain people, this is not, where they want to be, and that's okay. But Jiu-Jitsu for everyone is GB's slogan, but it's Jiu-Jitsu for everyone who wants to be in this kind of environment, who fits in this kind of environment. And if you don't, that's absolutely okay. But what it creates is an environment where you have support with like-minded people anywhere you go in the world. It's very special.
It's like the old saying, Gracie Baja, the organized like a team fighting like a family. It's true. It's
you feel that when you go other places.
Like for example, like we've been to like, I don't know how many different Gracie Baja schools in the last like 2 weeks, but like every time you walk in, it's like it's almost everyone's forever.
Yeah.
And
immediately.
It's not because we're wearing the same patch. It's just because of how Gracie Baja is built and the way Gracie Baja works, and it's really. It's an amazing team,
Well, that's it, obviously you guys stayed with me and my mum last night, and even if it wasn't, you Kendall and you Jeremy, like guys who obviously are well known like in the community, if it's just some random Gracie Baja who's coming over and messages us like, hey, do you need a place to stay? Like we're going out to dinner. It's like
that's
just
in 2018.
Look after each other.
Same thing. I had a little bit of traction, but most people said no. I had won some stuff, but I was like just some like purple belt girl, coming, and I'm like everywhere I went. People were like, do you need a place? Like, do you want to stay here? Let me show you this. Let me take you out and show you my city. Like, just incredible. So
that's amazing. Well, let's call it there. I'd love to do another one with you, Jeremy. It's always hard on these because it's like you could easily go like 3 hours to try and condense someone's life and thoughts into a small segment. Isn't really fair on them, but but we do what we can. And I thought it was a really fun episode. So I think we got a lot of interesting knowledge out there. I think I messed up the camera for like the first 10 minutes, but hopefully I'll be able to fix it. And Kendall, when we wanted to save your voice, we did that. But
I know. I got too excited.
Yeah. Well, when you're a little less busy, we'll sort something out, and we can find out.
We'll deep dive more into
about Kendall's story.
Finances and jiu-jitsu. That's like when we start talking there, I go, oh gosh, I got a lot to say.
You get excited. But thank you so much. It was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, guys. See you next time.
Oh.